Good morning, friends. Welcome back. It's Monday, so we are doing Mom Encouragement Monday. And I wanted to talk a little bit about falling into the trap of comparison between moms. I think it's really easy to do, and I think that it's really dangerous. A lot of times when people find out I have 5 kids, they'll say something along the lines of, wow, you have 5 kids, I only have 1, and I can't handle the one I have. And I cringe a little bit because I understand that they're just trying to acknowledge that parenting is hard, and so parenting 5 kids is hard, like parenting 1 is hard, so parenting 5 is hard. But I think that no matter how many kids you have, whether it's 1 kid or 10 kids, you're maxed out and you're overwhelmed and you're busy and you're wondering if you're doing it well. And it doesn't matter how many kids you are, I think, or have. Parenting is difficult. Training is difficult. Keeping them healthy and alive some days is difficult. And I think it's easy to see somebody walking down the street with a gaggle of children and think, wow, she has so many kids and she's dressed and so she's got it together and I don't. But you're only seeing a little portion of their life. You're not seeing the behind closed doors struggles. That I think that falling into the comparison trap, like I said, is really dangerous. And so one way I have tried to train myself to combat that, because I am like queen of comparison. Well, she's thinner than me, or she's makes more money, or which isn't hard to do because I don't make anything. But you know, her kids are better behaved, or all of her kids have shoes on. It's inevitable that we go somewhere and at least one child doesn't have shoes on, because I got 5 kids, people. So I think it's easy to fall into that like negative, like I said before in another post, like it's human nature to go to the negative. Well, she has 5, I have 1, she seems more put together than me, so I must be failing. And it's so dangerous, and it's so not true. I think that we all have different strengths, just as like women, we have different strengths, and then you give a woman a child and that strength is like multiplied, but also that weakness is multiplied too. Like it just seems bigger. Your weaknesses seem bigger and your strengths seem bigger. And so we all have different strengths. And so my strength, where you are looking at me and you're like, gosh, she's got it together, may be different than your strength. And I may be doing the same thing. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, oh, I need to do some work here. She's got it so together. And I think that that's okay. I think it's good. We all can't have the same strengths and weaknesses. I think that what we can do is build each other up. And I think one way that I have tried to train myself to stop the comparison and to be more positive about it and not immediately go to the negative is I try to look at somebody and what do I admire about that woman? What does she do? There's a woman in my church and in my school. She's an amazing leader. And so I'm watching her. I'm watching her lead, and I'm trying to learn from her. How does she lead well? What is she doing? How can I implement that into my life? And then there's another woman who I think is just an amazing mother, and I love her kids, and so I'm watching her. What does she do? How does she parent well? And how can I take that and bring it into my life so that I can parent well? So I think when we put a different spin on it, instead of looking at somebody and saying, well, she's got it together and I don't, maybe look at some portion and say, okay, so in this area of her life, she's got it together. What can I learn from her in that and implement into my life? That is something I've tried to do. And I've actually learned a lot from different women in my life. And I've gained a lot of wisdom just by watching people. I think the other thing is that parenting is tiring. It's difficult. It's 24/7, and it's full of different seasons. It's always changing, but it seems like each season has a different difficulty. Like when they're infants, you're exhausted, and that's hard. But then when they start sleeping more, they also start talking back more. And so now it's like mentally difficult, whereas it's not so physically difficult. So I think each season has different difficulties. So you have to be able to adapt. Like how you're raising and training in one area has to be, you have to adapt with the seasons as well. but it's difficult, and it's easy to grow weary and negative and just be tired. And so one of my favorite mom verses is Galatians 6:9. And it says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up." Yes, you can have candy after our bacon. You ready for some bacon? So I think that it is easy to grow weary. God recognizes that it's easy to grow weary and get tired. And he said, don't become weary in doing good. Yeah, you can have bacon. We gotta let it cool off. Parenting is a good thing. Raising these precious little people is good. It's a good thing. Hi. But it's also exhausting. And it's also tiring. And it's also easy to grow weary. And I think that God recognizes that. He sees it. And he doesn't want you to grow weary, because he says, at a proper time, we'll reap a harvest if we do not give up. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, and we're talking about with the kids, the first Thanksgiving, they didn't go to a grocery store and just buy a frozen turkey and get some sweet potatoes. They had to grow it all. It was a harvest for them. They had to work hard. And then they had to go and gather it all, and then they had to prepare it all, and then they had to serve it all. And they reaped a harvest because they put a ton of work into it in the beginning. So working hard and not becoming weary of doing good, and not becoming weary of sowing seeds and pulling weeds, you're going to reap a harvest at the proper time. Raising your children, whether it's one child or 8 children, you're going to reap a harvest if you do not grow weary, if you do not give up, but to continue doing the good work. So I just want you to remember, as you go about this week, to just keep doing your good work. Work on your strengths, work on your weaknesses, but don't compare yourself to other mamas, because we're all a mess. We're all a mess in different areas, and that's okay. And I guess just try to find a mom that you really admire, and just try to learn from her. And so anyway, we'll be back tomorrow with Tip Tuesday.
I say bye.
You want to say bye? Say bye.
Bye.
Bye. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Do you want to push the button? Push it. No, not that button. Give me your finger.